Hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. I'm a IRCC licensed immigration consultant and I love my subject. It's funny, it became my occupation as well. This is something which I make money out of as well. But I just love Canadian immigration. Why? Because, well, each day there is something new, there's something different, so much of hope, so much of excitement. It's like as good as living a very roller coaster of a life, right? I mean, every day there is something that you have to look forward to. You have to try and understand, you have to try and get the mystery out of it, but it continues to happen. Thank you. Thanks to the universe, this is what we are doing. But for everybody out there, I'm sure it's not as exciting. You would want this whole anxiety to go away. You would want the whole frustration to go away. You would want all this despair to go away. But that's how it is, right? So I'm here to talk to you about the weekly roundup. This is our weekly roundup. We are on Saturday morning. We will talk about whatever has happened in the last week in Canadian immigration, and then give you a bit of an insight of what's happening in terms of the draws. Of course, everybody is excited about the express entry draws because you know what? They are back, back with a bang. We anticipated a bit of it. We were hoping and we were praying for a bit of it, and thankfully they are back. And I would have wanted it to be a bit bigger than what it came out to be, but hey, you know what? Who's there? Who am I to complain, and why should I complain? Let's get started so then we can talk more about it, because this seems to be the favorite topic. Okay, what do we have here? Canadian immigration weekly roundup. Stay up to date on the Canadian immigration news and trends as we prod along. Topics of discussion, again, PNPs and updates. We will have the express. Of course, we will talk about express entry, right? And the other news that is there. Let's see. PNP draws. British Columbia continues to hold its draws. Thankfully, they're one of the most regular express, not express entry. They're one of the most regular PNP draws out there. Each week or 2 weeks, they always conduct their draws. On the 28th of May, they held another targeted draw for in-demand positions under the skilled worker and international graduate streams, including the EEBC option. The only issue here is that the number of invitations have been becoming smaller and smaller. So they have 66 invitations that were issued, and the cutoff scores were for 11 candidates were invited with score of 93. But in childcare professions, 11 with score of 93 in construction, 122 were also invited in tech professions. This was the other draw that happened. 9 candidates were invited with a cutoff of 100 experience in healthcare. And then, as you are seeing, the scores are pretty scary there as well. Express entry. Of course, there's nothing else that happened this whole week, right? And I'm glad that it leaves us so much more room to talk about this express entry, which continues to sort of, it's like that person, right, who brings excitement and at the same point of time also is a thorn, sometimes brings you all the pain and despair. But what happened is, they held a PNP draw on the 30th of May, invited 2,985 candidates. So they issued 2,985 invitations, and the score was 676. So before I move on with this one, let's talk a bit about the PNP draw that happened on the 30th of May. IRCC represents the federal government. PNPs obviously are the provincial government. No surprise there, right? Some of the streams that PNPs have, or the provincial nominee programs have, are linked to express entry. Now, because they are linked to express entry, it means that once you will get the nomination from the province, you will get 600 points in your express entry profile, and then you can apply for your permanent residence through the express entry route. If it is a non-express entry, it basically means you are getting nominated by the province. Once you get the nomination certificate, it's valid for 6 months, and then you can apply for your permanent residence through the non-express entry route. So that's the non-express entry application. This is the PNP through express entry. For example, you have the human capital priority stream in Ontario. You have the skilled trade stream in Ontario. They are both linked to Express Entry. Even the French speakers linked to Express Entry. In Alberta, you have the accelerated tech pathway and the Express Entry stream. In Nova Scotia, you have the experience Express Entry and the Express Entry stream. British Columbia, you have the EEBC PNP. Saskatchewan, you have the Express Entry. So on and so forth. All the provinces have at least one stream that is linked to Express Entry. You get the nomination, you get the 600 points in your Express Entry, those 600 points go up. Now, on the 30th of May, 2,985 candidates were invited. Score was 676. So a lot of people are confused with two things. One, how come 2,985 invitations were sent out when the pool breakdown was at 2,918. So 2,918 was the number of people in the pool, but this was as of 29th of May. Now, because this was as of 29th of May, the draw happened on the 30th of May. It basically means a one-day gap. In that one-day gap, if there were 60, 70 people who had not yet accepted their nomination or who had received their nomination in that one-day period, then that is the gap that you are seeing between the number of people invited and the number of people in the pool. I hope that explains. Now, second curiosity and second thing that is completely dismaying people is 676. How can anybody get 76 as their score? Because hey, 600 is obviously the PNP points. So how can somebody have a score of 76? Well, it's actually possible. There is nothing. I mean, for people who have forgotten, how can we forget, right? 14th of February or 13th of February of 2021, when the CRS score was 75, 27,332 candidates were invited. Then 75 CRS then. So why are you so surprised with the score of somebody not having a score of 76? Absolutely possible. These are the PNP streams where age is not the criteria, right? Where your language skills could be as low as a CLB 5. That's acceptable. Even in Express Entry, if your tier code is 2 or 3 and you have CLB 5, you could be eligible in Express Entry, right? So that's not a problem. Of course, that's with the Canadian Experience class. And therefore, if you were a person who even had a score of 76, 75, but managed to receive a nomination under a specific trade category kind of a draw, trade related or a job offer related kind of a stream, then absolutely you could be eligible. There is no problem there at all. And that's how 676 is a possibility. 2,985 were invited. We sort of had a bit of a relief, but that also then prompted into all this kind of a thought that will IRCC conduct a CEC draw? Because we have been listening, we have been hearing about this, right? There has been this talks. I mean, I was at the NCIC, National Citizenship and Immigration Conference a week before in Halifax. And over there also when we spoke to the director of IRCC for the policies, and he also confirmed that yes, CEC draws are being considered. Mark Miller has already made this announcement saying that domestic draws made a lot of sense. So we all were quite pumped up, expecting that CEC draws will happen. And with the PNP draws happening, the automatic assumption was that they've done it in the past. They've done it during COVID, that they would conduct a PNP draw, and then the next day or a day 2 later, 2 days later, they would conduct a CEC specific draw. So therefore, there was that heightened expectation that can there be a CEC draw? And you know what? There was a CEC draw, and this was the biggest news, at least for in Express Entry for some time to come. And I'll tell you why this is big. And so a lot of people may not agree with me, and that's all right. It's not about you having to agree with everything I say. It's an opinion-based podcast stream, whatever you want to call it. So on the 31st of May, which is yesterday, IRCC issued 3,000 invitations. And this was for people who were specifically under the Canadian Experience class. The score was 522. Obviously, it is a big deal because they haven't conducted a CEC draw since what? More than 2 years. I think we are coming closer to 3 years. This is almost 32, 33 months back. In September of 2021 was when the last CEC specific draw was conducted. So obviously you can imagine people are quite pumped about it. Why wouldn't they, right? Now the thing with CEC is that you need to have 1 year of valid Canadian work experience and the tier code, valid tier code paid in Canada within the last 3 years. That's how you become eligible under the Canadian Experience class. Now, with all these talks that the immigration has been bringing up, Mark Miller has been bringing up, on all these steps that they've been taking in order to reduce the number of temporary residents in Canada. One of the ways of doing it was to make the TRs into PRs, right? Not the TR to PR program, but just absolutely literally convert TRs, temporary residents, into permanent residents by way of specific programs. And as I said, domestic draws was considered to be absolutely one way to go about it, and thankfully that's how it has happened. Obviously, that raises a lot of other questions, but for the time being, let's talk about the CEC specific draws and what this means. Now, first of all, this happened after a hiatus of 5 weeks. So there was the big gap of about 5 weeks. Usually the draws happen in 2 weeks, and that's what we are used to. And IRCC has been issuing a very small size of invitations. You had a 1,500, 1,400, 17, 16, 18, 1,800, 2,900, I think was the maximum that they went. I don't remember, but yeah, approximately. So therefore, now that they have conducted draws over a span of 5 weeks, actually they haven't done us any favor, in the sense like they haven't done us any favors, in the sense like it's not a big deal. Why? Because the total number of invitations that have been issued after 5 weeks is 5,985. So 2,985 for the PNPs and 3,000 for the recent express entry CEC draws. For PNPs, they have to conduct the draws. That is the deal that federal government has with the provinces, right? That provinces will issue nominations and IRCC will most definitely issue those invitations to the PNPs. So if there were 2,985 PNPs, they have to clear them out. There is no discretion there. It's the others that there's a discretion with. So all they have done is that they just given us 3,000 ITAs. I know it feels like a big number, and I know I was quite pumped up and I was quite excited yesterday, but when you start thinking more and more about it, it's not really a very big number. It's only 3,000 invitations that have been issued, and that too after a span of 5 weeks. Also, considering that majority of people who are sitting at a score of 520 plus or even 500 plus are actually CECs. So it's not really a big deal, right? If you see in that perspective. I'm just playing a devil's advocate over here. I'm not trying to take the air out of this balloon at this point of time, which is just high. But you have to look at it in a more pragmatic manner and try to see where am I coming from. I know a lot of you feel that there are people who have bought LMIAs or whatever that might be, and that is the reason they're sitting with scores of 500, but that's not entirely true. And the reason why would you not give genuine CECs the credit that they can actually be with a score of 500? Very, very simple example. There are lots and lots of universities in Canada, and you also know that there are lots and lots of people who are studying master's degree in Canada. So the fact, if you are below the age of 30, so let's say you're 29, you're a single, you have good language proficiency skills, you have 1 year of experience back from your home country, you now have a Canadian master's, and you also now have 1 year of work experience in Canada. Bang! Your scores can very easily cross 525. No big deal. And then instead of masters, if you have a 1 or 2 year diploma, you would be sitting at about 515 with a CLB 9. Imagine if you then have CLB 10, or if you have additional points in any of the CLB factors after 9, you can pretty much climb up. So why would you think that there aren't enough people who can fit into this profile? I mean, you can obviously have a bit of variables, right? You could be CLB 10, but you could be 32 years old, and yet you would be at the same points bracket. But if you work these permutations and combinations, trust me, there are plenty. I mean, I do so many consultations each day, and I can guarantee you that there are tons and tons and tons of people who can fit this profile, and even a bit of variables that who do you think is sitting at 510s or 500s or 515s or 520s? Majority of them are already CECs, because if you are just a federal skilled worker, you can't cross 500. If you do not have any Canadian connection, you can't. There is absolutely no way you can cross 500 if you do not have the Canadian connection, or if you're not a francophone, right? IRCC has already said that they don't have enough francophones in the pool to start giving out invitations to. That was the last ATIP notes that we saw, which we have discussed about last month, that there aren't enough people in the pool, and they're waiting for more people to come into the pool so that they can start conducting bigger French draws as well. That's another coin, right? That's another side of the coin. And if that's how you look at it, 100%, I am absolutely certain, and I will agree with you. Yes, of course, there are so many people out there who have LMIAs. Now, whether they have bought it, they've not bought it, they've got it in whatever ways, that's a debate for a different day. But there are obviously a lot of people who have been able to get LMIAs. Why? Again, why do you have to always call it and say that people are buying LMIs? Why would you not say that, yes, people are also genuinely getting LMIs? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know what you guys are thinking. A lot of you, and any one of you who is actually a genuine person who has the LMIA, why don't you just comment and let's know, right? Because there are plenty of them out there as well. But again, the discussion is for a different day. Yes, the debate continues. Yes, there are employers out there. And yes, LMIAs is a big deal. ASDC is talking about it. IRCC is talking about it. Even Mark Miller has talked about it and talked about the fraudulent ways of getting through. But as I said, it continues to be that the people over 500 in majority are Canadian experience class. So even if they were conducting the general category draw, it is still largely a CEC draw. And therefore, in combination of these two draws, 2985 and 3000, the total invitations issued 5,985 over a span of 5 weeks. No great shakes, but thankfully now you have CEC draws because it helps a lot of people calm their nerves down. But what will then happen is that as we move forward, these draws, if they continue with the CEC draws, then you should start seeing scores coming down further as well. Some people over here saying, please skip this topic. It's very, very boring. Okay, I didn't know Express Entry has become very boring. Probably, yeah, maybe too much of it or too less of it. And then there's somebody else also who says, talk about more pressing issues. I do not know what is more pressing at this point of time other than the draws and the Express Entry. Tell me what is more pressing and let's talk about that instead. Because my understanding is that if it's not Express Entry, I don't see what else is not is pressing or not pressing. But other than that, yes, this was what happened with Express Entry. Let's see. What is the outlook for Express Entry for the remainder of 2024? Again, this is another thing. Okay, yes. Will CEC draws continue? What happens to the category-based draws? What happens to the federal skilled workers and the people who are not CECs or people who are outside Canada? What will happen to the PNPs? Well, first of all, PNPs, they will continue the way they are. Of course, there are lots of restrictions that are coming into the PNPs. And the reason the restrictions are coming is because there are more people, more eligible candidates, but the quotas for the PNPs are not that high. The total immigration quota for PNPs is only 110,000 for the whole year. And that includes CECs and not, when I'm saying CECs, I mean, that includes Express Entry and non-Express Entry. That includes PNPs with the entrepreneur streams as well. So plenty of different kinds of streams that the provinces have. Not all of them are Express Entry. And therefore, PNPs will continue, but you have seen a lot of restrictions already. Alberta paused their draws. BC is going to make some changes to the next year's streams. Prince Edward Islands reduced their quotas. Ontario was the only one who had a larger quota by 5,000, almost 30% increase in their targets or quotas. What about FSW? Well, FSW continues. I don't see anything stopping with FSWs in terms of category draws. So there are no changes to the categories. Category draws will also continue, and FSWs will continue. Federal skilled workers or people who are not Canadian experience class at this point of time will continue to be invited through the category draws. There will obviously at some point of time also be a general draw, which will largely again be Canadian experience class. But of course, there will be people who are federal skilled workers, but who may have an LMIA or who may have not yet completed the Canadian experience, but still have an LMIA or have those offer points, job offer points, LMIA or LMIA exempt. Those will then be invited under the general category draws. Will CEC draws continue? I have a strong feeling that yes, it will continue, at least for some foreseeable future. You could also start seeing variations of draws. You could also start seeing draws which will have category and the stream included. For example, they could very easily conduct a draw which will say Canadian experience class but STEM category, Canadian experience class but healthcare categories. You could also see variations of those draws coming up as well. But again, as of right now, CEC draws are happening. They will, in my opinion, continue to happen for at least some foreseeable future. You will continue to see the federal skilled worker draws in and off. There might be a few draws in between thrown in, which will be a general category draw, which basically clears out the people who have the job offer points. And as I said, PNPs continues with the restrictions that they have. Okay, so this is the express entry pool breakdown. I'm sure most of you have already taken a look at it. 601 to 1200 was 2,918, which got cleared out. 501 to 600 has, or rather had, as of 29th of May, 14,211, huge number. And even then, you see, even after they issued 3,000 invitations, all the score came down to was 522. Tells you that the biggest chunk of people with the 500 plus is sitting between 500 and 520. Now, these are the people who also could be below the age of 29. They're not with a master's, Canadian master's, but with the diploma. So they are 15 points less. So they're sitting at the 515, 512, 517, that number of the score. And that is where the biggest chunk is. So as and how IRCC even continues with the CEC draws, I mean, how many do you expect? They cannot continue doing a 5,000 kind of a draw every 2 weeks. Not going to happen. They might do it for a bit of time, in the sense like they might do 1 or 2 off large size draws so as to clear out the majority of 500s. But I don't see that remaining consistent throughout. So that then brings us to people, what's happening at the 491 at 500 level, 8,855, big number there. What happens to these guys? Well, these guys at this point of time, if you are a CEC, and if this is the trend that is now being established and hopefully it continues, then there is a possibility somewhere around the corner. If you are not a CEC, may as well get some work experience in terms of a priority occupation. That's pretty much how it is looking like right now. But then this has only been the first draw with Canadian experience class. Let's keep our eyes open and fingers crossed to see the subsequent draws in Canadian experience class at what number or size they are in, because that will define how quickly the scores drop below 500, even for CECs. And that's how you can take a look at it. But more importantly, if you can add that 6 months of work experience in any of the priority occupation, then you will be the ones who will be smiling at the end of the year. So that's what you need to take a look at. In other news, we do have some other news. Let's see, what is that? Yes, protesters paused the no liquid hunger strike after speaking to the PEI's top immigration official. Now, for people who don't know, international students and foreign workers in Prince Edward Islands did choose to stage a protest in expectation of their demands being met. And the demands is that Prince Edward Island should conduct a fair draw, which I'm not sure what it means, because I don't see any unfair draw. The only issue is Prince Edward Islands is also one of the smallest provinces of Canada, and therefore their nomination quota is not very big. So these protests, I'm not sure what they are expected to draw. But what Prince Edward Islands did do is that they reduced their quota for the year by about 25%. That was the first thing. Number two, they also changed certain criteria, as in that they will not accept certain application types within the food services, and that then triggered a lot of people as to how can they change this overnight. The point is that the provinces have the right, and it is written on every single province's website, they have the right to change their criteria, their conditions at any point of time. At times, I guess we are all culprits in our expectations of believing that permanent residency, PNPs, is our right. It's actually not. It's a privilege. It's not something which you can demand that I must be given. I was here as an international student. I must be given a permanent residence. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Everybody who is not a permanent resident here obviously is a temporary resident. And if you're a temporary resident, that demand that we should be given that is not, in my opinion, which bodes very well here. Yes, of course, you have to be eligible. You can walk through the certain pathways, but think about it. Do you logically think it's possible, realistically think it's possible that 3 million temporary residents can all become permanent residents? It's not going to happen. And therefore, when there are these criterias and conditions, and then to protest against them, and then I do not know. What do you guys think? I mean, do you think that's a fair way to go about it? So what's happening is that the protests in Prince Edward Island actually they are continuing, but the students and the workers who were protesting, they did have a discussion with the immigration officials, and at this point of time, they have paused their hunger strike. So they actually went on a hunger strike, and they've put it on pause for the time being. The protesters met with Jeff Young, who's the director of the Provincial Immigration Office in Prince Edward Islands. Prince Edward Islands apparently is considering the demands. I do not know how they can consider the demands, or rather all of it, because they have more than 12,000 expressions of interest against their target of only 1,590. I mean, 12,000. I mean, think about it. The number of applications that they have is about 12,000, and about 10% of that is what they can absorb. So the 90% they can't. And this is the expressions of interest. What about all of those candidates who have not yet even created their expressions of interest? So Prince Edward Islands has just put a pause. They are not accepting any more expressions of interest. And if that's how it's going to be, what and how can you blame them? And where are they going to absorb? I honestly do not see what kind of a result that is going to come out from something like this. But based on these protests, so what happened is Manitoba, the students protested because those are the people who had already created their expressions of interest, or they were waiting for the draw, or they were already invited, but the applications were in progress. But the processing time was so long that they had to continue waiting, and therefore their work permits were expiring, and hence the province advocated to extend their work permits. Mark Miller accepted, and about 6,700 of them would get their work permits extended. Now, no further details were shared as to who, how, the process, nothing of that sort. That's the only announcement made. Now, obviously, inspired with that, you have protests happening in Prince Edward Islands, and inspired from that, you've also seen protests happening in British Columbia against the changes that are coming next year. But now we are also hearing about protests happening in Ontario. I think something about the talks for the protests happening tomorrow. Now, as and how these will start increasing, because see, again, as much as I said that I don't agree with this format, but at the same point of time, I can imagine how the students are feeling. I mean, they are feeling like they are shortchanged. They're feeling that they were led to believe that this is a definite pathway. And now with all these changes being made, the changes being made, they are feeling as if the rug has been pulled under their feet. And that feeling of being cheated is creeping up. However, the numbers don't add up. The total number of people in Canada as temporary residents versus how many people can actually become permanent, those don't marry. And because those don't marry, there is no synergy there. I do not know how this is going to pan out, and how the outlook or the eventually how this whole thing is going to pan out. But yes, at this point of time, the student community is getting a really bad name. The reputation or the credibility, or if you go around, if you look at the social media platforms and the forums, and you see the kind of comments that are coming up from the Canadian citizens and residents here, those are not very encouraging. And collectively, there is a huge anti-immigration sentiment and anti-student sentiment throughout. And that seems to continue right now with all these things that are happening. And if at all, Prince Edward Islands does accept the demands in the way they are being proposed, because the demands are give everybody a work permit, demands are extend the work permits, demands are give everybody conduct fair draws. I do not know fair draws what that means, but that's what they're saying, and provide everybody a chance to apply for the PNP. That in my opinion can't happen. And if that does happen, and if that something sets like a precedence, Oh boy. Yeah, then imagine one happening in Ontario, in every city of Ontario, or in Saskatchewan, or in Alberta, and then things can get out of hand pretty quickly. Let's see how that pans out. I'll keep you updated as and how I hear more things in this aspect. Connect with us on the social media platforms. We are all over YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, of course. Like, share, subscribe, and whatever else that you need to do. But yes, we look forward to connecting with you on all platforms. Absolutely. If you wish to book an appointment for one-on-one to discuss your application, your queries, then this is the link. By all means, you're welcome to book an appointment. If you are looking to avail our immigration services, then please drop an email to this address, and we'll be happy to take your queries and understand how we can be of assistance to you. From here on, let's start taking questions because there are tons and tons and tons of it. Okay, somebody said IRCC, CBSA, RCMP needs to take a firm stance on protests. Well, that's the thing with democracy, right? I mean, you are in a free country. Freedom of speech is your right. And because of that, as long as the protests are peaceful, there is no harm in protesting. I mean, protests actually everything is not wrong about protests. I mean, that allows you to keep your governments in check, that allows you to question the government, and therefore anybody who is in power at that point of time or in the office. So protests by itself is nothing wrong with that. It's just that they need to be peaceful and they need to be more reasonable and logical. Otherwise, they would just lose steam over a period of time. What is the processing time of the priority tech application? Approximately 3 months at this point of time with all the people. I mean, for our clients for who we are getting nominations, about 3 months is what we are looking at. Okay. Problems are people with master's degree in Canada have 3 years experience in home countries and 2 years in Canada are deducted points by age over 30. So their scores are lower. No, actually not. Even with this profile, the scores are even higher because you get more points for 3 years experience in your home country. It's with a profile like this, the only time you will lose points if you're at the age of 30 or 31 or 32 is when your language proficiency skills are not that high. That's where you're losing points. So if you are able to improve, if you're 30, 31, 32, 33, if you're able to you do better with your English proficiency skills, then you will see your scores are also going to be in the 525, 530 range, even if you are slightly older. But you have a master's in Canada and you have 3 years of work experience outside Canada. So no issues there. I don't think that is the, okay. What else is here? Oh, sorry. These are a lot of super chats here. Let's look at them. Monica says, postgraduate work permit expiring end of June. Score is 489. Eligible for Ontario Tech for considering fake extension. Please advise if rejection of fake extension will later have a negative impact on my PR application. No, the answer to that question is no. If you have applied for a fake extension or if you're considering applying for a fake extension, the refusal or the rejection of that extension does not have any impact whatsoever on your PR application. And the reason why it does not have any impact is because it's an application. You were not eligible, you got refused. Okay, all right. That's about it. So that does not have any negative impact on your PR application. As long as you do not commit any misrepresentation, you do not provide any fraudulent documents, you do not provide any incorrect information or lie in your application, you should not have any reason to worry about. My agent wants to put my current work experience LMIA NOC on the work history, even though I am not claiming points. Will this cause me problems? I can get all the requirements for it. Well, first of all, your agent seems to be, whatever. I'm sure you know that. Because absolutely no reason to add the NOC, or in your case, tier 4, tier 5 work experience in your work history. But if he does wants to add it, there is no harm in doing it. Because the system will not give you points, IRCC will not consider it. So it basically has zero consequence. If you add it, it's fine. If you don't add it, it's fine. So let your agent feel happy. Add your work experience for the NOC or tier 4 or 5 in your work history, because you will have to show it in your personal history anyways. And yeah, absolutely provide documents for it. There is no harm. There is no negative or positive. You won't get points for it, and neither will it make any negative difference. So no problem with it. IRCC told Francophone draws will dominate the category selection in 2024, but what about its future post 2024? Would French still be worth it even after 2024 for an outland candidate, non-CC? Well, good question. IRCC has already tabled immigration levels plan until 2026, and if you see in the immigration levels plan for 2024, 2025, 2026, there is actually an increase in the number of francophone targets each year. There is an increase by 1 to 2%. So of the total targets, so 26,000 for this year, 28,000, I think, I don't remember the exact number for next year, and then 30,000 for the year later. So that number is only increasing, which tells you that learning French or having French as your second language will absolutely be beneficial to you even beyond 2024. So if I was you, I would definitely take that on. See, think about it. There is no harm in it. Even in the worst possible case, in the worst possible scenario, there is still no harm in it. Why? Because if nothing else, you would have learned another language. And hey, when has learning another language ever been, not been beneficial? So by all means, there's always a good side of it. But as far as Canadian immigration is concerned, the Francophone immigration will continue. The push for Francophone immigration outside Quebec will continue. It's French is the second official language in Canada, and there obviously is a push, or there's a political agenda behind wanting to push Francophones outside Quebec region as well. So that will continue. I don't see that stopping at any point of time. Can I apply parents' visit visa pending court case in India? Well, technically you can, but if they have a pending court case, it also depends that they might have some police case. And if they have a police case, and depending on what kind of court case it is, on their background check, if that is flagged out, then it's a problem. Further, in your statutory questions, you have to disclose you have any such situation. And once you do disclose that situation, IRCC might want to probe that further, and therefore the chances of approval might remain at high discretion of the IRCC officials. Exact number of ITA remain for category quota 2024. I don't know, because it's a percentage. It's about for trade category, I forget how much was it. Does anybody remember trade categories? About there was 30%, there was 15, I think 15 to 20%, no, or less, was it? Approximately that much. I don't, to be very honest, I don't remember the exact category quotas for trade. I can look that up for you and probably respond back to you later on in the comment section. By all means, drop it in the comment section. I'll come back and give you that exact number there. Have 1 year of work experience of food services supervisor in Ontario, and I got a job of tier 4 from AIP designated employer in New Brunswick. Will I be eligible for AIP after working for 1 year in New Brunswick? If you will work for 1 year in New Brunswick and you're working under tier 4, then if you are eligible under the AIP, yes, you will be eligible. There is no problem with that, because you would have 1 year of work experience in tier 4 already, right? And Atlantic Immigration Program just requires you to have 1 year of experience of at the same level or at one level below. So there is no problem with that. I did not mention masters when I applied for study visa. Ooh. This is questionable, as my master's education was in progress. Okay, in progress, all right. And later I completed it when waiting for visa during COVID. Wes has master's, can claim points in PR. Will there be an issue? Well, in your case, since at the time you made the application, since the time you submitted your application, you had not yet completed your master's, means you couldn't have said that I've completed my master's, because you were still completing it, and therefore no issues. You can claim points for it. You can absolutely explain about it. I don't see any issues here with this. It's only because your master's were not yet completed. Had you completed your master's and not disclosed it, now that was a different situation altogether. I got invitation, but my closed work permit expired on the 27th of May. I already applied for work permit extension with the LMIA file number. Still did not receive the new LMIA approval. I am on implied status. Can I accept invitation and process without losing 50 points? Oh boy. Technically, no, you can't, because your LMIA 50 points are given to you under two situations, right? One is that you have a valid LMIA. And number two is that you have a valid closed work permit that was issued on the basis of the LMIA. The LMIA may have been expired. In your case, your work permit is expired and your LMIA has expired. So in your case, 50 points in this scenario, no. If you still want to take a chance, it's entirely up to you. But given the circumstances, given your situation, given what you're telling me, you are not eligible for those 50 points. Sumit says, I started on a closed work permit in BC. Later in October, moved to GTA with my new closed work permit with the same employer. Can I get points for a valid job offer? Technically, yes, there is no problem with it. You are still on the same employer. You have completed 1 year of work experience for the same employer. Then you should be good to go. Postgraduate work permit expired in Feb. Applied for bridge open work permit in May after AOR with spouse as main applicant. Got submission, confirmation letter. Can I apply? Can I work while waiting for work permit? Current status is visitor record. Postgraduate work permit expired in Feb. Applied for bridge open work permit in May. How can you apply for bridge open work permit if your work permit had already expired? So you are not even eligible to apply for bridge open work permit. And no, you cannot work. You are currently, your current status is that of a visitor. You are not eligible for a bridge open work permit. And no, you cannot work because you are a visitor. And therefore, you have no authorization to work in Canada. My agent wants to put my current work experience. Oh, we just did that, right? Yeah. Sharat says, my work permit extension result will come anytime soon. My original restoration period will end next week. If I apply for a visitor record today, should I stop working or only after work permit rejection? Okay, even if you apply for a visitor record today, you have to stop working the day you get the refusal or rejection of your work permit extension application. That will be the day you will lose your implied status and the authorization to work based on the implied status. So that's when you will stop working. Will Nova Scotia resume processing applications in PNP for food and accommodation industry? I believe yes. I just don't know when that would happen. I am assuming it probably could be pushed towards the end of this year or maybe even early next year. I have 2 experiences, 2 years CEC experience and 5.5 months international experience post ITA. Can I remove my international experience as I don't get points for it? Yes, you can, but you must move it to the personal history. You must disclose any activity, any period of work experience, even if you're not claiming points for it, it must be disclosed in your personal history. You don't need any documents for it, so you're good with that. I am CEC STEM. I have 488. I have made that to get NOI from Ontario's Human Capital Priorities. I can make profile at 502 with spouse non-accompanying. What should I do? If I was you, I would stick to 488 at this point of time because I don't see 502 happening anytime soon, unless you are in STEM. And if you're in STEM, then 502 is a good score to have in STEM. So you have to make up your choice. You have to make up your mind. Are you going to go with Ontario Tech or are you want to go with your 502? Obviously, with 502, your spouse is not accompanying you. So you have to identify who you're targeting. Are you targeting IRCC's Express Entry draws? Are you targeting Ontario's Tech draw? And then make up your mind. You honestly, in this situation, can't have it both ways. So with 488, your spouse is included. With 502, your spouse is not accompanying. So yeah, you see the benefit in what you want to do. My CRS score is 501. My postgraduate work permit will expire on 30th of June. In addition, my wife is also with me on spousal open work permit. Can I apply fake extension of my postgraduate work permit with my wife's spousal open work permit? Yes, you can. Technically, you can do that. You can apply for your extension. You can apply for your spouse's extension along with you by providing your documentation. Both your applications will be refused, of course, and both of you will be out of status at that point of time. Both of you can then apply for restoration of status and then change your status to a visitor, or you can choose to leave Canada. Options available. If I left my job on April 3rd but have pay stubs ending 15th April, would my experience count till 15th April or 3rd of April? If you did not work beyond 3rd of April, then your work experience counts till 3rd of April. If you have pay stubs until 15th of April, now for the 3rd April to 15th April, if you are being paid for paid leave, and if you have 2 weeks of leave pending for which you got paid, then you can count that until 15th of April. Otherwise, if you just worked until 3rd of April, then that is what counts. PGWP will expire soon. Am I eligible for IMP application if my employer willing to help? By IMP, you mean International Mobility Program. For your information, postgraduate work permit is also International Mobility Program. The other option for International Mobility Program would be Francophone Mobility Program, whereby you should have at least French language proficiency at level CLB 5, and your employer should be willing to offer you a job. If that is the case, under the Francophone Mobility Program, you will be able to apply for your work permit. If not, there might not be any other option here. I have 48 full-time weeks and 10 part-time. Does that make me eligible for EE? 28 full. Yes, you would be eligible for EE because those 10 part-time weeks at 28 hours per week would calculate roughly to about 6 to 7 weeks, or maybe 8 even. And that would then give you 48 plus 6, about 54, which would then make you eligible in express entry under Canadian Experience class. And yes, you can absolutely go ahead with that. CNS score of 505, postgraduate work permit expiring in July. Any chance for another CEC draw as I'm trying to get LMIA? Well, in my opinion, the CEC draws should continue, but I guess another 2 weeks and we will have that answer for sure. Can I Indian work experience full-time and paid before bachelor's? Didn't show during student and work. This is another one. So you have Indian work experience, which you did not show during your study visa and your work permit. Can I add? Think about it. Why didn't you show it in your study permit application, right? You chose to hide this information. You chose to misrepresent at that point of time. Now, if you choose to do it now, what are you going to explain in your letter of explanation? That I did not show it because I didn't feel like showing it, or I did not show it because I thought you will not approve my study permit application, or I did not show it because I forgot I have a work experience? What are you going to say, right? And all of those are indicative of the fact that you deliberately, you knowingly hid facts, and these are material facts. They could have very well influenced the decision of your study permit application. So therefore, if you now choose to add it in your PR application, because obviously you're going to get benefit of it, then this comes with a very huge risk. Yes, of course, there is a possibility IRCC might not flag it, might not see it, might ignore it, might not pay attention to it. Yes, absolutely, there's a chance for it. But there is an equal chance, or actually a bigger chance, for IRCC noticing it, flagging it, and then asking you to explain it. And after not being convinced, if they are convinced that this was misrepresentation, material misrepresentation, then giving you a ban of 5 years for that reason. So it's a chance that you have to be careful about before you make that decision. Can restoration of status for work permit be expedited? It was refused due to missing compliance fee, despite having LMIA been waiting for 3 months. Unfortunately, none of the applications in immigration with IRCC can be expedited unless there is a situation where it's a matter of life and death. So in that case, you will have to raise a web form, you will have to contact your nearest MP and then have them raise this matter to IRCC. But under normal circumstances, there is no expediting your application. Any chance for OINP human capital priorities with a score of 480 in 2025? I don't know. There is absolutely no way for me to know what the scores are going to be in 2025. Sorry, Amandeep, nothing there. Sorry, Jeshan, nothing there. George says, any chances for an upcoming international student stream draw? Yes, absolutely. There will be a student stream draw. We don't know when, we don't know the scores, we do not know the criteria. There is no way to know that because Ontario does not give you any information in advance for their schedules. Do we need a valid status to get invited for CEC? My work permit has expired and I'm sitting at 521. Will I get an invitation for next CEC draw? You don't need a valid CEC. You don't need a valid status to get invited for CEC. You could actually be in India. You could be in any country outside Canada as well. You don't need to be even in Canada to be invited for CEC. You see, your status, your eligibility as CEC will remain valid for a period of 2 years because your work experience in Canada should be within the last 3 years. So for the next 2 years after that, you will continue to be CEC regardless of whether you are in Canada, outside Canada, or what status you are on. So yeah, no problem there. My third-party employer has address of Alberta as I'm a contractor. I'm working in Ontario. What should I write in employer's postal address? Well, if it is asking you for your employer's postal address, then you will write the employer address. If they're asking you for your address, then you will write your physical address wherever you are physically based. You can always add a letter of explanation as well. CEC score of 530, work expiry in Feb 24, applied bridge open work permit, received ITA. In May, work permit rejected, now submitted reconsideration and 90 days restoration option. So what is the question here? I don't understand the question. Work expiry in February, April applied for bridge open work permit. You cannot apply for a bridge open work permit after the expiry of your work permit. You have to be on an implied status in order to apply for bridge open work permit. You have to be on a valid work permit status in order to apply for a bridge open work permit. If your work permit has already expired, you can't apply for bridge open work permit if you do not have an implied status. So in your case, there is no reconsideration, and then there is no 90 days restoration, because February, March, April, May, your period of 90 days restoration has also been lost in this case. Okay, guys, please do not do more super chats. I will not be able to cover all of them. Please do not do any more super chats. Thank you. I have a CRS score of 508 in tier 1. Should I take English test again to increase the CRS score, as the previous draw was in mid 500s? Yes, absolutely. If you can improve your scores, that's always a good way to go about it. If you're only thinking STEM, then 508 should definitely cut it at some point of time. But yes, if you can improve your scores, then you should always do that. Received biometric instruction letter for express entry, getting married next week. Spouse's work permit expires in October. Did not disclose common law relationship. Can I add spouse but show relationship history of 1 year common law? Oh, what you're asking me is, should you be hiding facts or should you be lying in your application? I can't say that to you, right? It depends entirely on you as to how you will explain your relationship. Bear in mind that living in the same address does not always mean that you are cohabitating or you're in a common law relationship. So, think how you can express explain and express your application, but do make sure that you disclose everything truthfully. After getting Ontario AOR, can I apply for PR via EE if I am on visitor record? Is it best to go back to India and wait for PR application to be completed? Well, both are available to you. Being in Canada specifically will not give you any additional advantage. So there is nothing that will happen faster because you are in Canada. So if you wish to go back to your home country, absolutely you can. Can I extend my open work permit from outside Canada? I have valid open work permit but haven't entered Canada yet. Can I apply for a new open work permit during my PGWP extension instead? I do not know which open work permit you are on, but if you are asking how to apply for postgraduate work permit extension, you can't. There is no option to apply for postgraduate work permit extension. There is no provision unless you received a shorter duration of postgraduate work permit because of passport expiry. Only then you can apply for it. And yes, you can apply for it from outside Canada as well. Guys, please do not do super chats. I will not respond to the questions that are coming in now in the end. Please do not do super chats. Applied postgraduate work permit when traveled India, diagnosed TB, came back and then got postgraduate work permit approved, didn't update IRCC. Will I get misrep in EE application? Well, since when you applied for it, you were not diagnosed with TB, so it's not a problem. But please make sure you do disclose it in your future applications. And of course, I hope you get well soon, and also make sure you provide updated medicals when you do in your future application. Can I apply for bridge open work permit if I receive ITA after applying for visitor record? Because my work permit extension rejection, can I restore 90 days to a worker? It all depends at the time when you're applying for a bridge open work permit. If you have a valid work permit or if you are on an implied status as a worker, only then you can apply for a bridge open work permit. If you're on an implied status as a visitor, you cannot apply for a bridge open work permit. I have a 1 year experience in user tech support. Didn't mention it in my study application as I was working at that time. Can I include it in my application? It's a risk you will take. You chose not to disclose this work experience during your study permit application. Why didn't you disclose? What was the reason, right? And if you now want to use it, which is again considered as misrepresentation because you chose to hide this information and lie in your previous application. The decision is yours. the consequences can be severe. Yes, IRCC might not pay attention to it, but the chances are if it is flagged, then you can have a very serious situation at hand. I have a PCC from last year, haven't gone back to India. Is it still valid? And I have a valid LMIA. Work permit expires in a month. Do I apply for Open Bridge since I got ITA or closed work permit extension? Too many questions there. I can't really understand which one is what. If you have a police clearance, if you received your police clearance while you were outside India, you did not go back to India, it remains valid. You can use it. You can add a cover letter saying that this is still valid because you did not go back. If you have a work permit which is expiring and you have a valid LMIA, then yes, please do apply for a closed work permit so that you can remain on implied status or at least be on work permit status. TB was in lymph, not in lungs. Okay, I understand that. At this point of time, you don't have to worry about it because at the time you submit your application, you are not suffering from anything or you did not, you are not aware. But in your future applications, please do disclose it and also please add a valid medicals at that point of time. When applying for a visit visa for my parents, can I show my pay stubs savings as proof of funds? Yes, you can show your pay stubs and proof of funds, but the visit visa application is not assessed based on your documentation. Visit visa application is of your parents. They want to see your parents' financial stability. They want to see your parents' income. They want to see your parents' ties to their home country. Your funds are not what is being assessed. You can show your funds to show that yes, you will be able to take care of their expenses, but even then they will still have to establish their own financial documentation to show that they have strong ties to their home country and that they will indeed be able to return back to their home country. Need to update address for Ontario after moving? No, you don't need to update addresses to Ontario if you have moved. Only if you have then submitted your application to IRCC and then you are changing your address, then you need to raise a web form and you need to inform IRCC. I have worked for Indian employer remotely for 1 year, which while physically being in Canada during my postgraduate work permit, can I claim points? No, you cannot. In order to claim points for foreign work experience, you should have been outside Canada. Recently got married. My spouse is a PR holder, status 2.5 years. I got visitor visa before I was married. Can I visit my wife with my visitor visa and then apply for inland work permit? Yes, you can, but you have to first apply for your spousal PR application and only after that you can apply for your work permit. Guys, please do not do super chat. This is the last question. I will not be able to answer anymore. Do not do any more super chats, please. I have accumulated proof of funds over the last 2 months after my ITA using my salary and a large CRA tax refund. Is it okay? It's not 6 months old. Yes, it's fine. You will just need to explain the source of these funds. And if you're able to explain the source of these funds, it's not a problem. Sorry, there's no question there. Thank you so much, guys. That was the end of our this week's weekly roundup. Thank you so much for joining in, and we shall do this again. Until such time, stay forever hopeful and stay safe.